a bustling departure gate at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, home to countless journeys, big dreams, and unsuspecting fate. As the sun gleams through the massive windows, one passenger, proud and self-assured, prepares to board her flight, unaware that she's about to face the unthinkable. Across the lounge, a woman whose entire life's work stands behind the airline's success steps forward. She's unsuspecting, humble, and poised, ready for a simple trip. What follows next is a collision of entitlement and identity, a showdown that will leave an entire crowd stunned, and a shocking phone call that ends with swift and irrevocable consequences. The day started like any other at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, the busiest airport in the world. Streams of passengers wove their way through the checkpoints, bounding toward their gates, hearts drumming with wanderlust. The aroma of coffee from nearby cafes merged with the excitement and tension unique to airports. It was a warm morning in early summer, the Georgia heat lingering just outside the climate-controlled corridors. Sasha Matthews had just arrived at the airport, sporting a sleek grey blazer over a crisp white blouse, comfortable yet stylish trousers, and a pair of low heels that managed to look both professional and practical. Sasha was a black woman in her late 30s who exuded an air of calm confidence. She had learned to carry herself that way, radiant, self-assured, and with every right to be proud of her accomplishments. Earlier that year, Sasha had co-founded an innovative airline in partnership with Delta Airlines, forging a vision that offered premium service and community engagement. While it was still under the Delta umbrella, it was making waves with a unique brand identity that championed diversity and inclusivity within every layer of its operations. The new joint venture was small, but it was steadily winning hearts and minds in the aviation world, thanks largely to Sasha's insights and leadership. Despite her success, Sasha refused the trappings that came with her high status. She often declined the luxury of traveling by private jets or having personal chauffeurs, preferring instead to blend in with other travelers. It was her way of staying grounded, connected to real people and real experiences. After all, she'd been a little girl with big dreams once, gazing up at planes cutting across the sky. She wanted to make air travel more accessible, more welcoming to everyone, no matter their background or race. That morning, as she rolled her modest carry-on across the terminal, she felt a quiet thrill. She had a vital meeting in New York City, where she would finalize details about the next phase of the venture with Delta's top brass. On her phone, she had a congratulatory text from Ed Bastian, the CEO of Delta Airlines himself, wishing her safe travels and looking forward to the day's discussion. This was a momentous step for her airline, a milestone she would have given anything to see come true. From a bright-eyed aviation enthusiast to co-owner of an airline, Sasha's life story was an embodiment of the American dream. A few gates down in Delta's Concourse A stood Karen Lockwood, an impeccably dressed woman with a short, fashionable haircut and a large designer handbag looped around her arm. Karen had a stern demeanor, her eyes constantly flicking from her watch to the overhead flight status screens. While she too was heading to New York, her gaze occasionally fell on fellow passengers with a disapproving glance. She had a tendency to mutter small complaints under her breath about the lines, about the speed of the staff, about anyone who didn't fit her vision of how travelers should behave. Karen prided herself on being a frequent flyer, although her frequent flights were usually short business trips funded by her uncle's small insurance company where she worked. Despite her limited exposure to the corporate world, she'd cultivated a sense of entitlement, a belief that she was especially deserving of deference and convenience. She hadn't flown on the new co-owned airline yet, but she'd read a few articles. Of course, those articles had been overshadowed in her memory by the social media remarks about a black woman thinking she can run an airline. Karen found it preposterous, though she'd never say so in those exact words. Her disapproval simmered just beneath the surface of her polite facade. As fate would have it, both Sasha and Karen were headed to Gate A23, where a sleek Airbus A321 was preparing for departure. A sign near the gate boasted the co-owned airline's motto, "Flying forward together." Sasha offered a small, proud smile every time she saw it. No one else at the gate, least of all Karen, suspected that this poised, warm-eyed black woman was the airline's co-owner and visionary mind. Sasha found a seat near the window, sipping on a bottled water as she answered emails. Karen, who was at a charging station close by, kept glancing in Sasha's direction. A million small things seemed to bother her, the way Sasha typed so confidently, the slight smile on her lips as though she had some inside joke or secret. And the fact that Sasha, a woman she judged too casually dressed for first class, was clearly holding a priority boarding pass in her hand. Already a subtle tension sparked in the air, waiting for the right moment to ignite. Pre-boarding announcements began echoing through the gate area. A gate agent, sporting the new airline's uniform that featured an embroidered Delta logo alongside the newcomer's emblem, stepped forward. His smile was bright and inviting as he addressed the waiting passengers. "Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Flight 672 to New York's LaGuardia Airport. We'll begin pre-boarding soon, starting with our passengers needing special assistance, active duty military, and first-class flyers. We appreciate your patience and cooperation." A bustle of movement followed. Passengers with wheelchairs and crutches formed a small line. Military personnel in uniform stepped forward, receiving polite nods and murmured thanks from fellow travelers. Sasha rose slowly, readying her boarding pass and taking a last glance at her phone. Karen noticed Sasha standing and bristled. She turned to the gate agent, who was busy assisting the pre-boarders. With a manufactured smile, she interjected, "Excuse me, I think there might be some confusion." Karen pointed discreetly at Sasha, should not be in the first-class line. "Could you check her ticket?" The gate agent, whose name tag read Miguel, offered a courteous nod. "Of course, ma'am. We'll confirm everyone's ticket before boarding." Karen's eyebrows rose as though she'd been validated. She turned away with a polite but clearly self-satisfied grin and patted the big designer handbag on her shoulder. However, she continued to keep an eye on Sasha, who was oblivious to the scrutiny. Sasha, meanwhile, was lost in thought, reviewing the final points of the upcoming presentation. She'd pitched innovative in-flight service concepts, community outreach programs, and a new safety protocol that was designed to be more transparent and instructive. She was beyond excited to share these details with Delta executives in New York. In her mind, she was already refining her slides, thinking of how she could improve them. Air travel for her was more than a service. It was an opportunity to expand horizons, forge connections, and celebrate different cultures. A few moments later, Karen watched as another employee approached Sasha, scanning the boarding pass with a beep that signaled approval. The agent smiled. "Thank you, Miss Matthews. Enjoy your flight." Sasha thanked him softly and began walking down the jet bridge. Karen's face hardened as she saw what she perceived as a personal affront. Someone she deemed unworthy was just granted first-class entry. Her hands clenched. She stomped toward Miguel, the gate agent, and said in a low, urgent voice, "I think your colleague made a mistake. That woman is definitely not in first class. I didn't see her at check-in, and I know all the faces. Can you do something?" Miguel raised an eyebrow, his friendly smile wavering. "Ma'am, I assure you, if her boarding pass is valid, then she's allowed to board." Karen let out a small huff. "I'd like to speak to a supervisor, if you have one. This has to be an error." Behind them, another gate agent, a middle-aged black woman named Dana, overheard. She stepped in kindly. "Is everything all right here?" Karen turned toward Dana, head tilted. That woman who just boarded, you know, the tall black lady in the grey blazer. She spoke as though Sasha's race was a crucial, questionable detail. She's carrying some sort of priority pass for your airline. Clearly, there's been some mix-up. Dana's expression didn't change, but there was a glint in her eyes. Miss Matthews, she's absolutely allowed to fly first class, ma'am. She's a valued passenger. Dana chose her words carefully, and a direct partner with Delta. I can assure you there's no mix-up. Karen seemed thrown off for a second. Partner? Well, I've never heard of her. Is she some random influencer? You know, these social media people always scamming their way into perks. It's not fair to us paying customers. Dana kept her composure, though frustration flickered across her face. She's authorized, ma'am, she repeated, her voice firm but polite. If you'd like to confirm it yourself, we can speak privately. Karen cut her off with a dismissive wave of her manicured hand. No, never mind. I'll board now. There was a moment of tense silence. Then Karen proceeded down the jet bridge, her steps hard and resounding. Dana and Miguel exchanged glances, but continued their duties. They were used to all manner of entitled behaviors from passengers, but there was something more unsettling about Karen's tone, a quiet venom that suggested this wasn't a simple misunderstanding. Inside the aircraft, Sasha had already stowed her carry-on and settled into seat 2A, an aisle seat. She preferred the aisle because it gave her a chance to observe the flow of passengers and flight attendants. She was always on the lookout for ways to improve her airline's service. Her mind danced through new strategies, perhaps a series of cultural appreciation days or a scholarship program for aspiring flight attendants from underrepresented communities. That was Sasha's vision, bridging gaps and creating opportunities. Not long after, Karen stepped on board, scanning the first-class cabin with hawk-like intensity. She spotted Sasha, whose face was buried in a legal pad filled with scribbled notes. Karen moved past seat 2B, her assigned seat, and leaned into Sasha's personal space. "Young lady," she said in a clipped tone, "I think you might be in my seat." Sasha looked up, confusion knitting her brow. "Your seat? That would be seat 2A if it's truly yours. But my boarding pass says 2A. Karen rolled her eyes dramatically. "I'm in 2B next to you, but I believe there's an error with your assignment." Sasha arched an eyebrow, momentarily speechless. She offered a polite smile, a skill honed by years of dealing with difficult personalities. "I'm certain there's no mistake," she replied calmly. "But maybe we should check with the flight attendant, if it'll make you more comfortable." Before Karen could respond, a flight attendant, a young man named Evan, approached. "Can I help you find your seat, ma'am?" Karen spun around, annoyance etched in her features. "I think there's been a ticketing error. This lady is well, I'm just not sure she's supposed to be here." Evan, who recognized Sasha immediately as the co-owner of this subsidiary airline, forced a neutral smile. "Miss Matthews is definitely in the right seat," he said gently. "But let me double-check your ticket to ensure you're in the correct seat as well." Karen fumbled with her phone. After a moment, she thrust it toward Evan, who scanned the digital boarding pass. "Yes, ma'am. Your seat 2B. Right here," he said, pointing to the plush seat across the aisle. Without so much as an apology, Karen turned on her heel and dropped into 2B. Sasha merely exhaled quietly and returned to her notes, thinking that might be the end of it. But the morning was just beginning, and the tension was only warming up. Once everyone had boarded, the cabin door was sealed and the Airbus A321 taxied onto the runway, engines humming with promise. The seatbelt signs blinked on overhead, and flight attendants performed their safety demonstrations. Sasha tucked her notes away and focused, out of habit, on the attendants' performance. She made mental notes. They seemed well rehearsed, but perhaps could use more engaging gestures. Always the innovator, she thought about how the safety briefings could be made clearer and more entertaining to keep passengers' attention. Karen, on the other hand, sat stiffly in her seat. Her eyes narrowed every time they flicked over to Sasha. Her thoughts churned. How could it be possible for this woman, someone she deemed an ordinary passenger at best, to have such privileges? Karen sipped on the complimentary orange juice and found it insufficiently chilled, thus prompting her to gesture a flight attendant over. "Could I have a glass of ice, please?" "This juice is lukewarm," she complained, her voice resonating with irritation. When the flight attendant returned with ice, Karen swirled it around in the plastic cup, still unsatisfied. Shortly after takeoff, the seatbelt sign blinked off. Flight attendants sprang into action, offering beverages and hot towels to first-class passengers. Sasha politely accepted a cup of coffee black, no sugar, and a warm towel. Karen snapped her towel open with unnecessary flourish, dabbed at her hands, and let out a theatrical sigh. Determined to bury herself in work, Sasha opened her laptop to review the deck for the upcoming meeting, double-checking the numbers on cost efficiency, carbon footprint reduction, and philanthropic community outreach. She wondered if Ed Bastian might allow for a short charity initiative on each flight, a voluntary donation button upon ticket purchase that could support local youth in aviation programs. The possibility thrilled her. Karen couldn't help noticing Sasha's laptop screen. The bullet points and spreadsheets seemed far too serious for an ordinary traveler. Curiosity gnawed at her. Maybe she's just a corporate drone who was upgraded. That had to be it. Nevertheless, Karen couldn't shake the feeling that something about Sasha didn't add up. A flight attendant delivered the first-class lunch choices: grilled chicken with a side of roasted vegetables or a lentil-based vegetarian dish. Sasha chose the lentils. Karen requested the chicken, specifically asking for an extra portion of sauce. While the attendant disappeared to fetch the meals, Karen leaned forward, catching Sasha's attention. "Busy working, I see," she said, forcing a polite tone that hinted at condescension. "Must be a big project if you can't even enjoy your flight." Sasha smiled politely. "It is a big project, yes. I actually enjoy it quite a bit. I've been waiting months for this meeting." Karen twirled a strand of her hair, not entirely sure how to proceed. She wanted to pry, yet she also wanted to maintain an air of superiority. "What kind of meeting could be so important that you're working on a plane?" Sasha paused. She was usually open and warm, but this situation felt a tad hostile. Still, she saw no reason to be rude. "I'm meeting with Delta executives in New York about upcoming expansions. My team and I are collaborating on some new features and programs." "Delta executives?" Karen repeated, eyebrows rising. "That's a big deal. Are you an employee or something?" "In a manner of speaking, yes," Sasha responded. She offered no further details, opting to maintain her composure. The conversation was setting off subtle alarm bells in her mind. Something about Karen's tone was off, like she was fishing for a reason to discredit her. Just then, the flight attendant returned with the lunch trays. Sasha offered a thank you, and Karen cast a cursory glance at her plate. She clicked her tongue disapprovingly, then stared at her own chicken dish. "So, you must think pretty highly of yourself," Karen remarked, giving Sasha a once-over. "First class, fancy meetings. Maybe you'll tell me your big job title." Sasha swallowed a bite of lentils, took a sip of water, and politely replied, "I'm co-owner and chief operations officer of the new Delta venture that's operating this particular route. We're a small branch of Delta, but have been growing steadily." For a moment, Karen's fork froze in midair. She stared as if Sasha had just claimed to be the president. "Co-owner? So you're the black woman behind this new subsidiary? I read something about that. Thought it was just a publicity stunt." A hush fell over Sasha. She maintained her calm. "It's no stunt. We've put in years of planning. The airline focuses on inclusive hiring practices, mentorship programs for young people from marginalized backgrounds, and a safe, welcoming atmosphere for all travelers." Karen let out a sarcastic laugh, as though she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Interesting." Sasha smiled thinly. She returned to her meal, hoping that would be the end of the conversation. But Karen's mind buzzed with disapproval and something else, a growing sense of envy and threat. She'd never expected to be seated next to the person behind such a forward-thinking venture, especially a black woman. Underneath the carefully groomed veneer, Karen's biases were rattled, and she grasped for a sense of control. The meal wrapped up and trays were cleared away. Passengers dimmed their overhead lights, settling in for a couple of hours of quiet. Sasha tried to focus again on her laptop, though she felt Karen's stares. Occasionally, Karen pressed the flight attendant call button for small, almost trivial requests: an extra napkin, a refill of water, another set of silverware. Each time, she'd watch Sasha from the corner of her eye, as if hoping to catch her in some breach of etiquette or authority. Sasha refused to engage. She remained poised, a sense of resolution setting in. She'd faced bigger challenges before cancelled flights, staffing shortages, even sabotage rumors. Karen's attempt to rattle her seemed inconsequential. Nonetheless, a seed of tension took root, foreshadowing something bigger looming on the horizon. Midway through the flight, turbulence rocked the cabin gently. The flight attendants made an announcement, requesting everyone remain seated with seatbelts fastened. A few mild bumps aside, the journey continued unremarkably. Sasha decided to close her laptop to rest her eyes. Karen, meanwhile, seemed restless and irritable. She flipped through the in-flight magazine, drummed her fingers on the armrest, and occasionally sighed dramatically. When the aircraft steadied, a flight attendant began offering snacks. Karen waved her away, complaining that the earlier meal was too salty anyway. The attendant moved on, unruffled. Sasha felt the tension from Karen's seat, though she tried to maintain her calm. At that moment, a middle-aged man from the economy cabin stepped into first class, presumably heading for the lavatory at the front of the aircraft. By airline rules, sometimes passengers from the main cabin do cut through if the rear lavatories are occupied. However, Karen seized upon the man's presence as some sort of intrusion. She leaned into the aisle, glaring at him, then turned to Sasha, as though expecting her to share in her outrage. "Did you see that?" she hissed, loud enough for the man to hear. "These people think they can just roam wherever they please." Sasha blinked, taken aback. "Well, sometimes the back lavatories are all occupied," she offered, trying to keep the peace. "And it's not a huge deal, as long as they're respectful." Karen narrowed her eyes. "So we just let anyone wander up here? What's the point of first class if we have to mix with them?" Sasha bristled. Karen's words dripped with entitlement and prejudice, reminiscent of a mindset that believed certain classes of people didn't belong in the same spaces. It rankled deeply, but Sasha still tried to remain civil. "You do know that we're all just trying to get to our destination safely, right?" Sasha said, her tone measured. "He probably needed a restroom." "It's not a personal affront," Karen snorted. "Easy for you to say. It's your airline after all. Maybe your next big policy can be to let economy passengers lounge around in first class too." Before Sasha could respond, the man returned from the lavatory and politely walked back to his seat. The flight attendant gestured for him to be careful since the seat belt sign had come back on, due to a patch of mild turbulence. Karen shot him a scornful look, then turned her attention back to Sasha. "You know, I'm starting to question this entire airline's credibility," Karen said. "If it's run by amateurs who think it's fine to mix up the classes and let just anyone do whatever they want, maybe people like me should take our business elsewhere." Sasha exhaled, her patience wearing thin. Still, she didn't want to escalate the situation. "I'm sorry you feel that way," she said, restraining herself. "We strive for the highest standards of service. If you have a concern, you're welcome to share it with customer relations once we land." Karen's lips twisted into a mocking smile. "Or better yet, maybe you should leave the airline you supposedly own. Might do us all a favor." The words hung in the air, charged with racist and elitist subtext. A hush seemed to fall over the immediate rows. Several passengers had overheard Karen's raised voice. Even the flight attendants, busy in the galley, cast anxious glances. Sasha's heart pounded in her chest, but she forced herself to remain composed. "We're on my flight," Sasha said gently, "and I have no intention of leaving." Karen let out a bark of laughter that held no humor. "Oh, you're certainly full of yourself, aren't you? Everyone's told me about these so-called inclusive initiatives. In my experience, that's code for lowering standards so more unqualified people can slip in." Sasha felt her face heat. She'd faced racism before, but it never got easier. The sting of disrespect, the heavy weight of prejudice, it all flooded her. Yet she wouldn't give Karen the satisfaction of seeing her unravel. "You're entitled to your opinion," Sasha said, her voice steady but firm. "I'd ask you to keep it respectful." Karen waved a dismissive hand. "I'm only speaking the truth. Anyway, if this is truly your airline, perhaps you should step off. This plane belongs to real travelers, to paying customers who earned their seats, not folks who got there through some publicity stunt or corporate quota." That did it. A collective gasp arose from a few passengers who were listening. One of the flight attendants, Evan, approached cautiously. "Is everything all right here?" Karen turned her ire on him. "No, it's not. I'm requesting that this woman be removed from the flight. She's disruptive." Evan's eyes widened. "Remove Miss Matthews from the flight? MAAM, we're in midair." Karen waved a hand in exasperation. "Then divert somewhere if you have to. I don't feel safe sharing space with her. She's obviously provoking me." Evan caught Sasha's gaze, concern etched into his features. He knew exactly who Sasha was. He also knew that Karen's request was beyond reason. He took a breath, turning to Karen. "Ma'am, Miss Matthews hasn't done anything against policy. If you're uncomfortable, I can see if there's another seat available, but we cannot remove her." Karen's face turned crimson. She raised her voice, spitting words like venom. "I'll have you all fired for this. I'll call corporate right now. I know people. This is not how you treat a loyal customer." Unbeknownst to Karen, several passengers had started filming the altercation with their phones. The flight attendants, mindful of keeping peace in a confined space, tried to de-escalate. Sasha remained quiet, her heart thudding in her chest. She wasn't afraid of losing her seat or her job, far from it. But the hostility and racism stung deeply, a reminder of just how much prejudice could still surface anywhere, even at 30,000 feet in the air. Evan offered Karen the option to move to the last row of first class to alleviate tension. That only enraged her further. "Me? Why should I move? She's the one who's not wanted here." At that moment, Sasha met the gaze of a passenger across the aisle, a woman who offered a sympathetic smile and mouthed the word sorry. That small gesture of kindness bolstered Sasha's resolve. Karen's final words before sitting back down were chilling. "We'll see who gets removed once we land. I can promise you that." The rest of the flight was tense. Karen, now subdued yet still fuming, occasionally muttered under her breath. Flight attendants stayed vigilant, but there were no further outbursts. Sasha resisted the urge to engage, keeping her gaze fixed on the seat back in front of her. She ran through calming techniques, slow breathing, focusing on how far she'd come rather than how far society still had to go. In the cockpit, the pilots were preparing for descent into LaGuardia. The captain made an announcement about weather conditions, slightly overcast but clear enough for a smooth landing. Passengers began collecting their laptops and making final trips to the lavatories. Even Karen could sense the journey was nearly over, and her posture relaxed slightly, as though plotting her next move. When the plane touched down in New York, the tension was almost palpable. Sasha checked her phone. A message from Ed Bastian popped up, "Looking forward to meeting. We'll send driver for you at arrivals. Safe flight." She felt a flicker of relief. This day wasn't just about a hateful encounter with an entitled passenger. It was a day of promise for the airline's future. As the aircraft taxied to the gate, flight attendants reminded everyone to remain seated until the seatbelt sign was off. Karen practically vibrated with impatience, her eyes fixed on Sasha like a hawk stalking its prey. When the sign dinged off, she shot to her feet, yanking her oversized handbag from the overhead bin. "You'd better hope corporate listens to reason," Karen hissed in Sasha's direction. "Because I won't let this slide." Sasha stood calmly, retrieving her carry-on. If she was shaken inside, she didn't show it. She merely gave Karen a gracious nod, as though bidding farewell to a passing acquaintance. Then she turned to exit the plane. A small cluster of passengers who had witnessed the ordeal offered Sasha quiet nods of support as she passed. Some even whispered quick apologies or words of encouragement. One man, the same who had used the first-class lavatory, tapped her shoulder softly and said, "I'm really sorry you had to go through that." Sasha thanked him and continued forward. Karen marched off the plane with clenched fists, searching for a customer service desk or any uniformed employee who might be a manager. As soon as she spotted a Delta representative at the gate, she bee-lined toward her, practically pushing other passengers aside. "Excuse me," she announced, brandishing her phone. "I'd like to file a complaint about a disruptive passenger who claims she runs some part of Delta. I want immediate action taken." The gate agent, whose name tag read Sharon, looked momentarily startled. "Ma'am, I can certainly take down your complaint, but I need specifics. Who is the passenger?" "That black woman, Sasha Matthews." Karen spat, as though the name alone was an offense. "She got into first class somehow and caused a disturbance. I want her removed from the airline, banned." Sharon's eyes flicked to Sasha, who was talking to a driver, holding a small sign with her name, then back to Karen. Sharon maintained professionalism. "We will note your complaint, but Miss Matthews is a recognized partner with Delta." "I'm not sure if..." Karen stamped her foot in frustration. "So you're just going to ignore me? I'm a loyal paying customer. Where is your supervisor? Or better yet, get me in touch with Ed Bastian. I'm sure he'll be very interested to learn how his airline has been compromised by some incompetent upstart." Sharon inhaled slowly. "Mr. Bastian is actually in New York for a meeting this afternoon. I don't handle direct calls to the CEO, but I can certainly escalate your concerns through the proper channels." She forced a polite smile. "If you'll fill out a formal complaint, we can," Karen snorted, waving her phone. "I'm calling corporate myself." She strode away, fuming. A few other passengers shook their heads at her behavior, and Sharon merely sighed, used to the occasional theatrics from disgruntled flyers. Meanwhile, Sasha met her driver and quietly explained the situation. She was a bit rattled, but years of dealing with challenges had given her a calm exterior. Inside, her mind reeled. Should she let it slide? Should she mention it to Ed Bastian? She was, after all, on her way to finalize a crucial business agreement. Perhaps it was best not to let some bigoted passenger overshadow that. But as she settled into the back seat of the black sedan, her phone buzzed again, a notification from someone in her PR department. A video had surfaced on social media, apparently recorded by a first-class passenger. Karen's meltdown in the cabin, replete with demands to kick Sasha off the plane. Already, the clip was gaining traction. Comments poured in, mostly supportive of Sasha, but some took Karen's side, stirring the pot of controversy. Sasha sighed. This was the last thing she needed on a day that was supposed to be about progress. Yet, maybe it was also an opportunity to address prejudice head-on, to stand firm for her airline's mission of inclusivity. She leaned back against the seat, closed her eyes for a moment, and prepared for the day that lay ahead. Ed Bastian's office at Delta's New York corporate suite was a sleek expanse of glass walls, minimalist furnishings, and an uplifting view of the city skyline. Sasha arrived precisely on time, greeting the receptionist with a warm smile. She was directed to a small conference room where Ed himself waited alongside several key executives. They all stood when Sasha entered, offering handshakes and enthusiastic welcomes. "Glad you made it safely," Ed said, gesturing for her to sit. "I trust the flight was comfortable?" Sasha hesitated. Normally, she would have said something positive. She had a vested interest in praising the airline she co-owned, but she decided honesty was more important. "The flight was mostly fine," she began. "However, I experienced an unfortunate confrontation with a passenger who," she hesitated again, carefully choosing her words. "She was demanding that I be removed from my own airline." Ed's brows knit together. "That's concerning. Was it about seat assignments or something else?" One of the other executives, Michelle Reyes, leaned forward. "We heard rumblings. There was an incident on flight 672, something about a disruptive passenger in first class. Videos are popping up on social media. Our PR team is monitoring it." Sasha nodded. "Yes." It got heated. She made some racially charged remarks and essentially demanded I leave the plane because she didn't believe I had the right to be there. Ed's expression grew grave. "That sort of behavior is not acceptable, especially not on a flight that represents our brand and your vision." Michelle glanced at her tablet, pulling up the clip. "It's already at thousands of views. Give it a few hours and it could easily go viral." Sasha took a breath. "I'm sorry, this is overshadowing our business agenda. But maybe it's also a sign that we need to address these issues more transparently. Our brand is built on inclusivity. If we can handle this right, we can turn a negative into a demonstration of what we stand for." Ed exchanged a glance with Michelle. "Agreed," he said. "We'll have a quick chat about the PR angle at the end of the meeting. First, let's go over the expansions, the philanthropic programs you proposed, and finalize these next steps. Then we'll circle back to this passenger issue. It's definitely something we'll address, but you've worked too hard on the business side to sideline it." Sasha felt gratitude well up. Ed Bastian, for all his corporate responsibilities, had always shown genuine support for her mission. If anyone had the power to ensure the new airline's success, it was him. They launched into a robust discussion about finances, route expansions, and the projected timeline for rolling out new in-flight services. Sasha showcased her meticulously prepared data, everything from staff training modules that promoted cultural sensitivity to charitable partnerships in underserved communities. The executives were impressed by her thoroughness and passion. After an hour of lively conversation, they broke for a short coffee break. Ed lingered behind as the others stepped out to refresh themselves, and he gave Sasha a supportive smile. "I'm proud of what you've accomplished," he said. "You're setting a precedent in our industry. Don't let one person's ignorance tarnish that." "Thank you," Sasha replied softly. "It means a lot." Once everyone reconvened, the topic shifted to public relations and how to handle the viral video. Michelle read excerpts from social media commentary aloud. "Kudos to Miss Matthews for keeping her cool. I can't believe the nerve of that woman demanding Sasha be removed from her own airline. Where can I see more of this new airline? I want to support them. Karen strikes again. When will people learn?" There were also a few negative remarks, but the overwhelming majority were supportive of Sasha and disgusted by Karen's behavior. Delta's PR team planned to release a statement reiterating the airline's commitment to inclusivity and the comfort of all passengers, praising Sasha for her professionalism. Michelle asked, "Would you be comfortable with a short press release from your side, Sasha? Maybe something that shows you're aware of the incident, but you're focusing on forging ahead positively?" Sasha nodded. "I'd be more than happy to. I can outline my thoughts and share them with your team." Ed then addressed the elephant in the room, Karen Lockwood. That's the name on the complaint, right? We actually have a record of her from a previous minor dispute. Nothing this severe, though. His eyes narrowed slightly. "She claims she's going to speak with corporate about it. She left several irate voicemails this morning." Michelle smirked. "Well, ironically, corporate is right here, and we've already got the full story." Sasha half smiled, relief mixing with resolve. Look, I don't want to see anyone harshly punished if it's not warranted, but if she's truly harassing staff and threatening to escalate this, maybe we should address it formally. Ed nodded. Let us handle that. Because you're right, we don't need someone like that making repeated trouble. We have a code of conduct for passengers. Everyone does. Feeling a sense of closure looming on the horizon, Sasha finished the meeting with optimism. They signed key documents and set target dates for the next quarter's expansions. Handshakes and congratulations flowed around the table. Even with the drama overshadowing part of the day, the central goal, securing the future of Sasha's airline, was achieved. As she left the office, phone buzzing with congratulatory texts from her own team, Sasha felt a mix of relief and anticipation. She knew she had done something significant, forging a path for those who might come after her. The world might not be perfect, but she could wield her influence to push it toward progress. Little did she know, outside the Delta suite in the very same building, Karen was making her way through security in a last-ditch effort to speak to someone in charge. The stage was set for a final confrontation that would seal Karen's fate. Karen Lockwood paced the lobby of Delta's New York corporate offices, the heels of her designer shoes clicking irritably against the polished floor. She had half a mind to storm upstairs and demand an audience with whomever ran the place. Her phone calls hadn't yielded the immediate results she craved, so she'd decided to show up in person. A security guard politely told her that she needed an appointment or a scheduled meeting to go upstairs, which only fueled her anger. "I want to file a complaint," she snapped. "I'm a loyal customer, a frequent flyer in first class. You can't just dismiss me." The guard maintained composure. "Ma'am, I understand, but unless you're on the appointment list, I can't let you pass the lobby. You're welcome to use that phone kiosk to speak with customer service." Karen's face hardened. "Customer service? I don't want customer service. I want the CEO." She glanced at a large digital directory that showed the floors and corresponding departments. Then she spotted something that sparked her interest, an airline partnership division on the 20th floor. Without warning, she made a break for the elevator bank. "Ma'am." The guard called after her, sprinting to block her path. Other employees, milling in the lobby, turned, startled. Karen shoved past the guard, jamming the elevator's close door button. Her heart pounded, adrenaline surging. She felt unstoppable. Years of internalized entitlement boiled over. She was so fixated on making it to an executive floor that she didn't realize the guard had pressed an override key at the security desk. The elevator doors reopened, locking in place. Karen found herself staring into the calm but stern face of the guard and two others who had hurried to assist. "Step out of the elevator, ma'am," the guard ordered. "We will call the police if you refuse to comply." Red-faced and out of breath, Karen realized she'd gone too far. She took a shaky step backward, nearly tripping over her own feet. At that moment, the doors of another elevator opened and out stepped Sasha, accompanied by Ed Bastian and Michelle Reyes. They had come down from the executive floor after finishing their meeting. Karen's eyes lit up when she saw Sasha. She pointed a trembling finger in accusation. "That's her! That's the woman who tried to steal my seat! She's a menace, and she's playing you all for fools!" A hush fell over the lobby. Ed Bastian leveled his gaze at Karen, stepping forward with an air of authority. He wore a tailored suit and carried himself with the assurance of someone used to handling corporate crises. "Miss Lockwood, I presume? We received your voicemails. You've caused quite a disturbance." Karen blinked, caught off guard by his directness. Her voice cracked with pent-up rage. "She's lying. She told me she owns part of the airline, but that's absurd. She caused a scene on my flight, and I want her gone." Sasha held back, letting Ed take the lead. The security guards stood on either side of Karen, ready to intervene if she tried anything else. Employees in the lobby watched, phones in pockets. Though a few stealthily recorded video, Ed's voice was calm yet firm. Miss Matthews is indeed a co-owner and chief operations officer of our new subsidiary Airline. She's also a highly respected partner of Delta. Your behavior on that flight was unacceptable, harassing a fellow passenger and, by multiple accounts, using racist language. Karen's face contorted. She opened her mouth to retort, but Ed continued, his words measured. We have a code of conduct for all passengers, and your actions violated it. Furthermore, you've now attempted to force your way into our offices without authorization, assaulting our security staff in the process. Trembling with rage, Karen tried to protest. She's the one who Ed held up a hand, silencing her. Miss Lockwood, you are no longer welcome as a customer of Delta Airlines or any of our subsidiary airlines. Your frequent flyer status is revoked, effective immediately. Karen's eyes went wide, the color draining from her cheeks. You can't do that. I'm a loyal customer. I have mileage points, Michelle Reyes stepped forward. Those points will be forfeited. Your behavior is in direct violation of our zero-tolerance policy for harassment. We have ample documentation, including passenger statements and video evidence, to justify this decision. A hush settled across the lobby. Karen's fists clenched at her sides, tears of humiliation threatening to spill. She looked around, searching for anyone who might take her side. No one did. Even the security guards averted their eyes, their duty done. Sasha remained behind Ed and Michelle, her heart pounding. She empathized with the sting of public embarrassment, but Karen's actions had consequences. This was the karmic backlash, swift and definitive. Ed exhaled. I believe we're finished here. He turned to the guard. Please escort Miss Lockwood out of the building. She has no further business with Delta Airlines. Shockingly silent for once, Karen allowed the guards to take her arm and guide her toward the revolving doors. As she passed Sasha, their eyes locked. In that brief moment, Sasha saw the flicker of Karen's world unraveling the meltdown of her carefully constructed image of superiority. Karen blinked, lowering her gaze. And then she was gone, stepping out into the busy New York street, exiled from the sky she once thought she ruled. A wave of relief washed over Sasha. Ed turned to her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. Let's move forward. With Karen forcibly removed from the building and effectively banned from Delta Airlines, it seemed the drama was over. Yet life has a way of surprising us, and Sasha soon discovered that Karen's meltdown and subsequent firing as a customer carried more twists than she anticipated. A week later, Sasha was back in Atlanta, catching up with her friend and fellow aviation enthusiast Chris Wilson. They sat at a trendy cafe overlooking the city skyline, sipping on iced teas. Chris was on his phone, scrolling through the latest industry gossip and social media chatter. Have you seen this? He asked, showing Sasha an article from a popular travel blog. The headline read, Karen's viral airline outburst. The aftermath, former insurance executive faces corporate fallout. Sasha raised an eyebrow. Former insurance executive? Chris nodded. Apparently, Karen worked for her uncle's insurance company, and a video of the plane incident reached him. He decided to let her go, citing that her actions and publicity hurt the company's reputation. Sasha sighed. She scrolled through the article. It detailed how Karen's meltdown had made national headlines, with tabloids dubbing her the latest Karen in a series of viral outbursts. Memes and comedic parodies had flooded social media. One late-night host even performed a skit re-enacting the confrontation, though they, thankfully, didn't make light of the racial undertones. Still, the article hinted that Karen's life was unraveling. Lockwood has been fired from her position at her uncle's insurance firm. Sources say policyholders threatened to switch providers after seeing the viral clip. Sasha felt a complicated swirl of emotions: vindication, pity, and relief. She was grateful that justice had been served, but she also couldn't ignore that someone had lost their livelihood. Then again, prejudice had real consequences, and Karen's was on blatant display. "That's some hardcore karma," Chris remarked, leaning back in his chair. "Not only is she banned from flying with Delta and all affiliates, she's also unemployed. That meltdown cost her everything." Sasha ran a hand through her hair, pondering, actions have consequences. At least we can hope she learns from this. Maybe it'll lead her to reevaluate her perspectives. She paused, then added softly, "Hate is never the answer." Chris offered a small smile. "You're too compassionate for your own good, but I agree. If anything, maybe this public shaming will force her to grow." A notification pinged on Sasha's phone. It was an email from Michelle Reyes. "Media requests about Karen Lockwood want to comment." Along with it was a link to an official statement drafted by Delta's PR team. They'd reiterated the airline's zero tolerance for discriminatory behavior, praising Sasha for her composure. The statement concluded by confirming Karen Lockwood's passenger ban and hoping that the traveling public understood Delta's unwavering commitment to inclusivity. Sasha fired off a quick reply. "Thank you for the statement. I stand by every word. No further personal comment from me at this time." She put her phone away and refocused on her iced tea. Her gaze wandered to the busy street outside, where people of all backgrounds hustled along, living their lives. "You know," she said to Chris, "I grew up believing that if you work hard and stay true to your principles, life will reward you." This entire situation tested that belief. "But now I see how important it is to stand firm," Chris nodded. "And look at your airline. The hype is bigger than ever. People are booking flights because they want to support you." He showed Sasha another article praising the airline for championing inclusivity. Bookings had spiked since the story went viral. The airline's message, "Flying Forward Together," seemed more relevant than ever. Airlines, as major conduits of travel, had a chance to unify people from all walks of life. Sasha felt tears prick her eyes, a mixture of gratitude and a release of tension. Maybe all of this happened for a reason. A painful encounter became a catalyst for deeper understanding and support. She thought of Karen, now jobless and banned from Delta, carrying the weight of her actions. Sasha hoped, in the back of her mind, that one day Karen would recognize her flaws and find a more empathetic path. Life, Sasha mused, had a funny way of doling out lessons. Sometimes the hardest moments, like being told to leave her own airline, could end up fortifying one's mission, shining a spotlight on systemic issues and galvanizing those who believed in progress. As she sipped her tea, she silently thanked the universe for the chance to persevere and for the chance to prove that equality and respect always soar highest of all. In the weeks that followed, Sasha's new airline gained unprecedented attention. A wave of supportive public discourse thrust her and her co-owners into the spotlight, garnering interviews on morning shows and talk radio segments. Footage of the Karen meltdown served as a cautionary tale, a stark reminder that society was no longer willing to tolerate blatant prejudice or entitlement. Sasha navigated the increased media attention with measured grace. Though the incident had been emotionally draining, she realized it had also become a powerful narrative. People rallied around her story. "Black woman stands her ground against racism and entitlement," and it echoed themes of resilience, progress, and bridging communities. One afternoon, As Sasha stepped into the airline's Atlanta office, she was greeted by an enthusiastic group of employees, many of whom had been hired through her inclusive employment initiatives. They erupted in applause, surprising Sasha. "What's all this?" she asked, smiling. Dana, the gate agent who had first encountered Karen at the gate, stepped forward. "We just want to show our appreciation. You stood up for our values. And thanks to your efforts, we're seeing more travelers who specifically seek out our flights because they support what we stand for." Miguel, who also remembered Karen's fiasco at the gate, nodded. "We're proving that an airline can be both profitable and principled." Sasha felt her heart swell. "Thank you. But this isn't just about me, it's about every single person here who believes in treating each other with respect and dignity." They presented her with a framed collage of positive social media posts from passengers around the world praising the airline. Some were short messages of encouragement, others featured photos of diverse families enjoying flights. Sasha's eyes misted over as she took in the heartfelt display. "I can't thank you enough," she whispered, holding the collage as though it were a priceless work of art. Even after the applause died down, a gentle hum of optimism filled the room. The team soon returned to their duties, checking flight statuses, responding to customer queries, and planning the next series of routes. But a renewed sense of purpose permeated every conversation. Later that day, Ed Bastian paid a visit. He personally congratulated Sasha on the positive press. "Bookings for your airline's routes are up by nearly 25% this quarter," he said, smiling. "Not to mention, brand perception metrics are through the roof." Sasha offered a genuine laugh. "I guess all press really can be good press, if we handle it right." "I still wouldn't wish that incident on anyone, though." Ed grew serious. "I know, no one should have to endure harassment for who they are. But I respect how you turned it into an opportunity to underscore the values we stand for." They walked together down the corridor leading to Sasha's office, discussing future plans. Ed expressed interest in expanding routes to international destinations, bringing the airline's inclusive mission to a global audience. Sasha felt excitement brimming at the prospect. More destinations meant more travelers. More travelers meant a broader stage to demonstrate empathy and unity across cultures. "Let's do it," she said. "Let's show the world what a truly inclusive airline can achieve." As evening fell, Sasha sat alone at her desk, staring out the window as the city lights of Atlanta flickered to life. Her mind drifted to Karen. She hadn't heard any updates about her beyond the news that she'd been fired. A small part of Sasha wondered if Karen might eventually come forward with an apology. But if not, Sasha was at peace. She'd found her voice, stood her ground, and created positive change from a painful encounter. A text popped up from Chris. "Dinner to celebrate your official expansion, green light? My treat." Sasha typed back a quick confirmation. She closed her laptop, flicked off the office light, and strolled out into the warm Georgia night. Tomorrow she would board another flight, greet passengers with a smile, and keep forging ahead with her mission. The horizon was limitless, and she was determined to make the skies open and welcoming to everyone. Thank you so much for watching this intense and inspiring story unfold. We've witnessed how one person's toxic entitlement led to a powerful lesson in humility, showing that hateful behavior has consequences, and respect for others always wins in the end. Sasha's journey stands as a shining example of perseverance and unity, proving that when you stand by your core values, you can transform even the darkest situation into an opportunity for growth and change. If you enjoyed the twists, turns, and ultimate triumph in this story, please take a moment to like this video, share it with friends who need a dose of inspiration, and subscribe to the channel for more dramatic and motivational tales. Your support helps us continue spreading stories that uplift and remind us all to stay true to empathy, respect, and hope. Thank you, and see you in the next video.